Every time I get news on DC Absolute, it's just more and more interesting. It's like a web that is being woven around me, and I'm just being pulled in more and more every time I hear something about it. I'm like, oh, this is like, this web that's being woven is beautiful. This bat web, pull me into the bat web. So friends, we have some fresh news from DC Absolute in regards to what is happening here. BleedingCool has released a few articles on some updates. We basically got a leak, which was an Ashcan cover. So we're going to be talking about that in detail. I'm going to be talking a little bit about what we can tell from the character based on the design, the artist, all that good stuff, and what it reminds me of. And then we're going to also be talking about some new creatives that have been linked, which are super interesting. I can't wait to talk about that. And then finally, we have the interiors for the Ashcan, which maybe is the best. I think I'm saving the best for last here in terms of these interiors, because man, these interiors are so interesting in the best way. So we're going to be talking about all of that and a little bit more as we get into this update on DC Absolute. So let's start off by talking about the Ashcan. So this design, I gotta say, I think this design is pretty fire. I really like it. I just think it's so different, but also still has a bit of a classic vibe to it. We got the pouches. This cover makes me want to read the Ashcan, and it is going to be an SDCC exclusive. I think some comic shops, though, BleedingCool was saying like some LCSs might be getting it, so some local comic shops might be getting it, but I will definitely be trying to grab one of these when I'm at SDCC, so I cannot wait to grab one and tell you my first thoughts on this comic. But based on even the interiors, which we're going to talk about in a bit, I think I'm going to be really into it. Yeah, I just love how this design, it just feels very Frank Miller in a really good way. It's really beefy. It's really interesting in that regard. Honestly, it also is giving me some Batman Year One kind of vibes with like, it kind of feels a little patchworky, which I think is interesting, but beefy Batman Year One, like Batman Year Gains, like Batman just bulking up. So that is, I think, really cool. This is Nick Dragotta, by the way, and for those who aren't familiar with Nick Dragotta, he definitely has a very distinct style, I would say. I think some people find it a little bit polarizing. Some people are not here for it, but I am not one of those people. I am here for the style. I like how it feels kind of manga-esque. It feels bigger than what you would, I don't know, it just feels like more grandiose, I guess, than most comics. It feels bigger than the page that it's on, if that makes sense. It's very expressive, and I think that's what I really like about that style. So one other thing that we have to talk about with this cover is that with Absolute at the top, Absolute Batman, the letters for Absolute look identical to Absolute Power. And I know I said in my first video when I was reporting on this, I think it was the first video, where I was talking about how there could be a connection between DC Absolute and Absolute Power, because I mean, they both have absolute in them. Some people, for some reason, were really not feeling that. And I remember some people in the comments being like, oh, there's not a connection. Like, that's not what's happening in Absolute Power. And I was like, yeah, no, I know this isn't necessarily what's happening, but I think this might spin out of it. And now I just want to say, like, look at those letters, though. I don't think that's a coincidence. I have heard people saying that when the people that also think that it could spin out of Absolute Power have been saying that it could have to do with Brainiac Queen, this new sort of alternate version of Brainiac that Amanda Waller is using, and how maybe she's going to do something to like create an Elseworlds and create this other universe, and that's where DC Absolute will come in. Now, that's just a guess right now. I don't know exactly how it's gonna come out of it, but it just feels like they're lining things up. The names being similar, the letters. Although I gotta say, Absolute, DC, please stop. Just stop using Absolute. They have their Absolute editions, so even if you're looking up what's happening with DC Absolute right now, it's confusing. Google wants to give me these editions, and I'm like, no, I want the news on this new line. And then, yeah, so I feel like Absolute was an interesting choice, but then again, we could say that about a lot of other words, like War over at Marvel, Secret as well, Verse We've got too many verses over there. And with DC, I would also add Crisis and Metal are also two that come up. Just why do we always use the same terms? I don't know. SEO? Is that why? Are we optimizing our keywords here? Search engine optimization in comics? Is that what's happening? Maybe. I don't know. It's going to be confusing. Oh well, welcome to comics. Everything is confusing. In addition to this Ashcan cover that we've gotten, there are some additional creative names that have also been added to this line. Namely, some pretty big ones, honestly. We have Jason Aaron, very excited for that. We have Deniz Camp, who's on Ultimates and DC Absolute. I hope I said that right. I kept thinking, is it Denis? Is it Deniz? I hope I said that right. Which would be crazy because, yeah, Camp is on Ultimates, and then also being on DC Absolute means they're going to be one of the few creatives, the only creative, I think, so far, that is going to be on both of those new lines at rival publishers, big two, Marvel and DC. And you know what? This honestly makes me think we're at a new era right now. We're seeing this, well, I think it's been building for a while, but this idea of not having so many writers and creatives that are exclusive just to Marvel, just to DC. And I honestly kind of love that because I think when we take away that exclusivity, it just frees up writers to and artists, anyone, to just give us more stories. And I feel like limiting creatives, I don't know, it's usually not a good thing to limit them in terms of what they can do. Also, you know, people got to pay those bills. And for me, I would love to be writing for DC and Marvel at the same time. How cool is that? That's so cool. So I'm glad to see that that is a thing that's going to be happening. I think that could be really cool. And I've also been enjoying what Camp has been doing with Ultimates. So yeah, I'm curious about how that's going to go. Probably pretty sick. We have Wes Craig, who some people might know from Kaya, which is a series from Image that everybody's been praising and loving. I know Kaya, for me, I haven't read it, but it is one of those comics that every time I see it on a stand at the comic shop, I'm always drawn into those covers, and I definitely have it on my list of things that I want to check out. So hopefully I'll get there at some point. Honestly, there's too many Image series I want to read right now. It's a problem. We have, of course, Nick Dragotta. We have Al Ewing. Al Ewing is fascinating, and a lot of people have been talking about this dream of Al Ewing writing Green Lantern, and that is also, I would love to see that. And I love the idea of DC Absolute being this place where we're going to get a fresh take on Green Lantern. That is something I am going to eat right up because I think Green Lantern is so fascinating, but I've never super immersed myself into the Green Lantern lore. I haven't read a ton of Green Lantern. I've read like bits and pieces. So something that has always intimidated me with that comic is that I just feel like there's so much lore at this point and so much stuff to know about the core and all these other cores, and the idea of it being fresh and different and unique really is a draw to me. Now, granted, Al Ewing is not locked into anything Green Lantern. I'm talking about a pipe dream here right now. But I think it's something that's very likely because Ewing definitely loves doing cosmic stuff, and Green Lantern is like peak cosmic DC. It's right up there, you know? So I think that could be interesting. I'd also love to see Al Ewing do Martian Manhunter, honestly. That could also be cool. I wonder if anyone will do an alternate Martian Manhunter. Martian Manhunter doesn't get enough love. We've got Jeff Lemire as well. Jeff Lemire I know from Thanos and, a bunch of other stuff. Jeff Lemire I just like. I think Jeff Lemire is really fun because Lemire always has these really interesting takes on things. Kind of a weirdo, but in the best way possible. I mean that as a compliment. So, Jeff Lemire, if you're watching this video, you're a great weirdo, and I love your stuff, and so I cannot wait to see what Lemire will be doing. People were talking about how Lemire swore off the big two a while ago, and now is coming back in, and I think has had some other things announced earlier this year with DC. But I don't put a lot of stock in that because I personally think all writers at some point and creatives are going to probably have some kind of falling out with Marvel or DC with how much they all work with them. And at the end of the day, comic creators love a lot of these characters and properties. A lot of these historical heroes are how many of us got into comics, and so I think you're always kind of going to come back, and especially when you have a project like this where you're getting a lot of I would hope, creative control and leeway to do what you want, I think it makes sense for Lemire to come onto a project like this. Even though Lemire is probably one of the most successful independent comic book creators, I would say, today. So not necessarily someone that needs to come back to it, but the draw is still always going to be there, I think, for a lot of people. We've got Che Grayson, who's a filmmaker. Should be interesting, something a little different. We have Pornsak Pichetshote, which I think should also be interesting. I heard a lot of good things. Pornsak, I believe, is an editor. Well, Pornsak does a lot of stuff, honestly. Comic book editor, writer, film director, editor, like, just a lot of cool stuff there. So I'm definitely interested. And I also like when there's names that I'm not as familiar with in terms of their work and their writing, because I think it's good to have a mix of people that are more established than people that might not be as well known. It always makes me excited because it means that I feel like we're going to get something really fresh, and definitely with a project like this, that's what I want. We have Nick Robles, we have Rafa Sandoval, and then we have Hayden Sherman. So, like I said, some fresh names with some legends in there, people that I know really well, people that I'm newer to in terms of what they're doing. And I'm just hyped. A good number of these people are also known for knowing Scott Snyder, or Scott Snyder has literally said before, like, this person's work is awesome and I'd love to work with them. So it does seem like we're really getting a nice, tight-knit Scott Snyder team here, where Snyder's going to be bringing in a lot of the people that he really wants to showcase in the industry, and that he has a lot of faith in what they're doing, which makes me feel good personally about the fact that even though everything I think creatively will be different in terms of style, we'll have kind of some unifying vibes, hopefully, ultimately. A lot of people are a bit nervous about Scott Snyder, it seems, as well, which I think is interesting. Well, maybe not a lot of people, but some people seem to be nervous about Scott Snyder doing Batman here and heading this whole universe. And I personally think, at least when it comes to Batman, definitely when it comes to Batman, that I really trust Snyder with Batman, because I like a lot of Snyder's Batman stuff. And I feel like, although maybe some people are worried it's going to be too similar to stuff we've already seen from Snyder in regards to Snyder's take on Batman, I think with Snyder, he's written so much Batman that means that he really does know the character quite well, very intrinsically, I would say. So there's enough knowledge there to give us what we really need foundationally from Batman, while still having written so much. There's not going to be that draw to write the same stuff again, because it's like you've written so much of it, now you have the freedom to do something different, but you also very intrinsically understand the characters. So it's not going to be so different that we're like, wow, this isn't even Batman at all, but it can be a cool different take. And that's what I am feeling even with this character design. So I'm excited for that. And I will say as well, I don't think there's as much of a draw to do the, like, this is what Batman is, we already know all of these things, and do the same stuff, when in some ways Snyder has helped to create some of that stuff, you know, of what we consider as being, I guess, more like safe Batman at this point. I mean, safe. I feel like Batman is never really safe, but I might be biased. I might be a Batman fan, in case you didn't know. Batman might be my favorite superhero. Don't tell the X-Men. We've also got interiors for the Ashcan here, and these are the things I am most excited to talk to you guys about, because the interiors are so cool. Guys, I'm way too hype for this. I'm way too hype. Oh, but I love these interiors. So the cool thing that we're getting here is we're seeing some unique movement with Batman, where Batman seems to be using his cape as like stilts and hooks. He can like hook people in, rope people in. He can walk around on his cape. He's got these hooks on the end of them, like how a bat has. I think bats have like little claws. I think that's what they have. Are those claws? What are those? Fingers? Talons? Maybe there are fingers, but they have these clawed fingers, clawed toes, and the cape is very much reflective of that. I love how the chest plate as well that's stitched on kind of just looks like a bat, but it's not intentional. But then this cape is giving so much bat in the best way. The way that this character is moving around, the way that this Batman is just slingshotting across, but is this hulking being, I think is so cool. And I also love the utility of just the cape. And let's keep in mind, these interiors that we're getting really just focus on that one element of Batman's look here, and that one if we want to call the cape a gadget, that one gadget, this one element of design, we're seeing it in so many different facets already. It also gives me a little bit of a Tim Burton vibe. There's a little bit of dark whimsy there, which, you know, I might be a fan of Tim Burton's Batman. Maybe. Perhaps. And I also just love the look of this. The lines. Just looks really cool. Some people are also wondering if this is the cape that has this function or if this is bat powers. Now, me looking at this, I was interpreting it more as it's the cape, so it's just a really functional, like, cool kind of gadgety cape. But at the same time, I kind of love the idea of Batman having, like, bat-like powers. I think that could be cool. Batman with powers is something that we don't usually see in general, so having bat powers could be really interesting, but I don't know. I think it's just the cape. This is the most bat cape we've ever seen, actually. It's like literally turning Batman into a bat. The battiest bat cape. So overall, I gotta say, I wasn't here as much for this initially. When I was hearing, you know, DC Absolute, I was a bit jaded. I've been hurt before. I have issues with DC continuity sometimes. I have some trauma, guys. I have some trauma from trying to sift through things and discern stuff and find... It's kind of a mess sometimes to find stuff there. But at the same time, I think at this point, I gotta say, maybe I do need a cup of that tea, because every bit of news that I hear from this just gets me more hyped. The idea of Kelly Thompson doing Wonder Woman, the idea of this version of Batman and what that'll be like, just the idea of creative freedom and so many amazing creatives coming onto this, and the proof of concept in what we're seeing from the interiors and the cover on this Ashcan. I can't wait to get a copy of this Ashcan. DC, if you're watching this, if you want to send me this Ashcan, please, I'm hyped. I'm really hyped. I would love to talk more about this. I can't wait to pick it up at San Diego Comic-Con, and I can't wait to talk to you guys more about this as we get more news. The belief is that in October, we're also going to be getting Absolute Batman issue number 1, and we're going to be getting DC All-In issue number 1 as well. So we'll get the Ashcan at SDCC. Some shops might also get an Ashcan, I don't know. And then we will get the release in October, which will start with those 2 books, and probably other titles, you know, to be confirmed, to be announced, all of those things. TBD, TBC, TBA. That's everything for me on this one. I hope that you enjoyed this update, and I hope that you are as hyped as I am. And if you're not, let me know why in the comments below. What are you not here for? What are you not feeling? Or if you are hyped like me, what are you feeling? Is there something different that you're really excited for, or a creative here that you're really familiar with that I'm not, that you really want to tell me about and tell me about their awesome work? I would love to hear that. I always love adding more things to my reading list. It is really long, but I love adding to it. That's everything from me, and I will see y'all in the next one. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, friends, stay nerdy.